Good morning. Hi. Welcome to University Unitarian Church. I am the Reverend Justin Almeida. It still feels weird to say that. And it's good to be with you all this morning. Just a few announcements. First, our sacrament of coffee is back in the building. After the service, please join us for refreshment and conversation afterwards. Next week, we are coming then to a full service here in the building. We're going to give that one a shot. Follow the bulletin and the gateway for more information about that. And then also, after the service today, we'll be holding a discussion on the sermon, which is about the eighth principle. So please join us downstairs in Natvold to have some really good conversations about the words that I'll be sharing with you today. And now, let us be together. Why a flaming chalice? The question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer. A cup of blessings overflowing, a cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst, a cup of wine for celebration and dedication, the flame of truth, the fire of purification, oil for anointing, healing, out of the chaos, fear, and horror. Thus was the symbol crafted a generation ago, and so may it be for us. In these days of uncertainty, sorrow, and rage, let it light and warm our souls and guide us home. Now please stand as you're willing and able, don your masks, and join us in singing our doxology this morning. And now, please join me in the spirit of prayer, meditation, and contemplation. I've heard it said that beyond right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. And in that grass, when we lay down, words don't mean anything anymore. There is no longer me and you. There is I and thou. As we go about our days, our weeks, our months, where has that field been? Has somebody paved paradise and put up a parking lot? Beneath the asphalt and the towers, the steel and the glass, the earth is still there. Living, breathing, calling us back to that field. Beyond our ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. Let us remember how to get there, how to lay down in that soft grass planted in the depth of our being, and remember for a moment that it is not me and you. It is I and thou. May it be so. Amen. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . .
next week. Today's plate collection goes toward DRUM, the diverse, revolutionary, Unitarian, Universalist, multicultural ministries. It is a mouthful. DRUM is a UU People of Color ministry and an anti-racist collective, bringing lay and religious professionals together to overcome racism through resistance and to transform Unitarian Universalism through our multicultural experiences. We developed from several older ministries, namely the African American UU ministries and Jubilee World anti-racism change trainings that some of you may remember. DRUM is a collective of people who identify as people of color. Allies are welcome and organized as Allies for Racial Equity. Together, we're open to all people. DRUM has a growing membership of UU people of color from every district and region. As an all-volunteer ministry, DRUM continues to lead efforts to fulfill the journey toward wholeness resolution, toward becoming an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, multicultural UUA, creating space for youth, young adults, and our families of color to heal and work collectively, and to steward an effective organization that develops new leadership and manages consistent communication with members. DRUM is also a volunteer-led organization with a steering committee elected by DRUM members at the annual meeting. One of the wonderful things that DRUM does is to create connection through regional gatherings. And I was lucky enough to help organize and facilitate one of these gatherings last year and roped in our very own Sheila Capistani as a keynote speaker and Justin Almeida as a worship leader. It was a moving and powerful experience that created a much needed space for belonging and spiritual growth. Please join me in supporting and sustaining DRUM with your generous donation today. Thank you.
And now, please join us as you are willing and able to stand and don our masks and sing hymn number 1029 in the teal hymnal, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear. Please bear with us. We haven't sung the song before, so I invite everyone into joyful imperfection. See, that wasn't so bad. I saw the words to that as I was looking for hymns for the service, and something about it called to me. And so thank you for bearing with me and singing it. It sounded beautiful. It feels very good to be back in our sanctuary this morning. this is my first time in the pulpit since my ordination in March. Thank you. And so once again, I want to say thank you for your love and support in my work and my ministry. It is an honor and a privilege to serve University Unitarian Church, our Seattle community, and our larger faith as a chaplain and spiritual care provider. It is filled with good and holy work. Work that has been difficult and needed in this time of pandemic. Chaplains fill an important role in meeting the psychospiritual needs of patients and staffs in our institutions of healing. We don PPE, personal protective equipment, and go into patient rooms to deliver the rites and rituals of life and death. We hold iPads up for families to see and maybe speak with their loved ones, since they cannot be at bedside due to quarantine restrictions. We gather clinicians together to hold space and decompress from long and costly shifts. We sit with parents and caregivers, children and friends, sometimes in parking lots, sometimes in waiting rooms, buffering the shock of tragic news. We are not therapists or psychologists, though we are trained in some of those methodologies. We're more like psychospiritual paramedics, stabilizing the mind and spirit in the midst of trauma. Our goal is helping human beings through sometimes the most difficult day of their life. Over the last 18 months, I have seen hospital policies change back and forth, sometimes on the same day, responding to new data coming in and interpreted by executives and medical professionals. Before the pandemic, the only time we wore masks was when a patient had a risk of airborne infection. Now, we all wear them. Patients used to be able to receive visitors at bedside. Now, visitors must be cleared ahead of time and often are not allowed to enter. At their best, these policies and procedures and the culture of the hospitals in which I work encourage the health and healing of both patients and staff, except when they don't, because they're never perfect. In my experience, one of the most difficult and morally injurious tasks that I've had to do is to tell a spouse, a partner, a child, a best friend, that they cannot be there when their loved one is dying, because the risk of exposure is too great. And I've been cursed at, pleaded with, almost physically assaulted, an experience many clinicians can speak to. We want to say yes, and yet we can't. Except sometimes, on those rare occasions, because every case is different, we have broken policy because we can't say no. Like when a 40-year-old mother of two sons, 10 and 13, was dying, and we snuck in their partner and children because we had to. We had to weigh the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. We did our due diligence, and we got lucky. The infection did not spread, and a family gained peace. 18 months later, many of us are challenging some of these same policies as new information has come in. We know about the risks. And I've learned that blanket policies without room for exception quickly become harmful because human life and death is messy and complicated. At best, the policies and structures help us make the best decisions we can in our mission to help and to heal. At worst, they are wielded like a club to force compliance regardless of the injury to self and soul. I've noticed that many institutions of human culture function in the same way as the hospital. In Seattle, we have our rules and our laws, mores and unspoken expectations about how we will be together, what is acceptable and what is not. The greatest of these, in my opinion, are the covenants we create, which inspire us more fully into our humanity. One of which is our own Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As much as this is quoted, it is not law. This is a faith statement. I don't think it's an accident that the United States and its federal government in many ways functions like a church. The Declaration is also a covenant for community and accountability. We all know the framers could have done better. At the time, many in the colonies did not have a right to life, liberty, or happiness. Many were slaves. Many were servants. Many in power were slave owners. Still, they wrote the words and made the promise. They formed a new nation, not so much in law or treaty, but in covenant. Because the final line in the Declaration is this: and for support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. This is not the quid pro quo of many legal documents. These words carried the weight of human connection, human reliance. A promise that then would be challenged through war and through peace, and like many great works of humanity, would chafe and challenge all those who encounter it, because it reached for greater ideals than was the reality and uncovered the shortcomings and hypocrisy of its authors. The Declaration was not enough. The Articles of Confederation were not enough. Our nation, in its diversity and complexity, needed something that would hold us together. Therefore, the Constitution was drafted. And it, too, begins with a covenant. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. At the time of its ordination, we, the people, excluded many: slaves, servants, prisoners, women, indigenous peoples. Justice excluded many of the same. tranquility, perhaps for few. Common defense would seek to strip the land and culture of those who were here before the white man came. Welfare for who? Did those blessings of liberty trickle down like voodoo economics? No, they did not. Yet our nation's Constitution, like the Declaration and other similar documents, the Ten Commandments, the Eightfold Path, the Beatitudes, the Five Pillars, all became more than what was just written. A living document with words that would always break out of the containers in which they were placed. We the people, order, union, justice, tranquility, welfare, liberty, posterity, these are transcendental subjects of the human being that cannot be controlled or held by a minority of interpreters. They are not signs. They are symbols of what could be. Signs are static. Stop, with its red octagon and white bold letters, is not a suggestion. And while I have been known to perpetuate a California stop, slowing down but maybe not stopping and making sure no police are looking on, its command is clear, and for a good reason. In the emergency department at Harborview Medical Center, I have firsthand knowledge of the danger in not following signs. Yield. Warning. Do not enter. Wrong way. No left turn. Our world is full of signs, helping with navigation and structure, law and regulation. There is no real room for interpretation. There is room for challenge. Whites only is a sign which was challenged by the symbols contained in our Constitution. A symbol, theologically, is an object which directs the human gaze to something greater than its reality. Its meaning can be debated, contested. It cannot be pinned down or captured through a sole interpretation. This, our flaming chalice, is a symbol. It was created for a particular moment in time to help provide documentation for those fleeing Nazi persecution. However, it has become more than just a passport stamp. It is the light of faith, the flame of wisdom, the fire of commitment, the container of spirit. It transcends the static. This, too, is a symbol. Which would overcome the limits and signs of the time. Our Declaration and our Constitution are symbols which transcend their original meaning and intentions. Their words can be challenged and new ways interpreted. And when the old words are not enough, new words can be added with the consent of the governed. Slavery can be abolished. People of color and women can have suffrage. Prohibitions against discrimination can be enacted. One of the reasons we say that our Constitution is a living document is because it can grow and change along with society and culture. Symbols never expire their capacity for interpretation. They will always overflow the narrow containers of belief. Our own Unitarian Universalist faith follows the covenantal tradition, replacing doctrine and dogma with 7 principles and 6 sources which help guide us in relationship with each other and with the world. And like most living documents as symbols of faith, our principles were not perfect, nor enough, when they were first drafted. Here is the original wording as adopted in 1961. In accordance with these corporate purposes, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Association, dedicated to the principles of a free faith, unite in seeking 1. To strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship. 2. To cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. 3. To affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. 4. To implement our vision of one world by striving for a world community founded on the ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace. 5. To serve the needs of the member churches and fellowships, to organize new churches and fellowships, and to extend and strengthen liberal religion. And 6, to encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. How much has changed in our faith and in the world from 1961 to 2021? Movements from within our faith, led by women and other groups, sought greater inclusion and openness. Man was made gender neutral. Indigenous and earth-centered traditions were included with the addition of our 7th principle in 1995, eventually bringing our principles and sources into their current form. 50 years have passed since the merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists, both of them Christian denominations that have since gone beyond their original creeds to form a more perfect union of pluralistic faith. We have truly come a long way in just a short amount of time. And once again, our denomination is considering adding to the principles because for many, the demands of the world rub up against our covenant and lay bare imperfections and shortcomings. An 8th principle has emerged to meet these challenges, covenanting to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions, which accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Like in the past, we struggle as a community and as a faith on why and how to do this. There was tremendous pushback in 1980 when women fought to be equals in the wording of our faith. It took 5 years, numerous meetings, conversations, and conventions to remove the words man, men, and brotherhood as a placeholder for all human beings. Therefore, it does not surprise me that we are having sometimes difficult, sometimes turbulent conversations around whether or not to adopt the 8th principle. My hope and prayer is that our current principles and sources can hold us in tension and in relationship through this process. As I reflect on the eighth principle and the events preceding its creation, I see it as a natural evolution of our liberal living faith. Like many living traditions, the crises of the moment have caused our symbols to transcend their old meanings and take on new interpretations, because the old meanings were not getting the job done. They had become signs to point at, rather than symbols pointing to. And when religion becomes about signs instead of symbols, it loses its connection to the human spirit, to the source of life and love, which calls us to transcendence. It becomes like a red octagon with white letters saying, "Stop." It becomes literal, fundamentalist, a rule to follow rather than a road to freedom. I wonder how our own principles have become like stop signs, stifling creativity. Are they still opening me up to something new in the world? To me, our principles call me to reflect on how I may be a better partner and lover, sibling and parent, colleague and friend, minister and chaplain. When I hear the proposed eighth principle, I feel a fire inside of me, challenging me to dig deeper into my spirit and show up in a powerful and with a powerful love in a new way. At the end of the day, I feel accountable to myself in how I have loved, working through the oppressions in myself and the institutions I serve. In this pandemic, I have been called to minister to all people, including the angry white conservative Christian with the MAGA hat, the neo-Nazi with white nationalist tattoos up and down their chest and arms, the gun lover, the border wall builder, the racist, the homophobe, the COVID denier. What helps me through these challenging moments comes out of our principles. And through them, I am committed to building relationship, as I'm able, to the point where a dying man with a very different ideology than myself trusts me enough to ask, "Will you stay and pray with me?" And I can reply, "We are in this together." And we move on into that field beyond right doing and wrong doing, where ideas, language, and even the phrase "each other" don't make any sense anymore. Siblings in faith, at this time and place, we are being asked to consider how we may better live into our Unitarian Universalist values. Because our 7 principles have not been enough to bend the arc of justice to the point where all people of goodwill are welcome and included in our congregations, welcome and included in our communities, welcome and included in our world. Events have exposed spiritual and moral cracks in personal and institutional foundations. We are called to respond. And like with many covenants I've known in the past, I am being asked to consider something new. My hospital needed new policies to respond to COVID. Our declaration needed a constitution to respond to the failure of the Articles of Confederation. Our Constitution itself needed further amendments to respond to abolition and suffrage, our Unitarian Universalist principles are now tasked to respond to the challenges of climate crisis, prejudice, and systemic oppression, all of which are linked through intersectionality. To deal with one means to deal with them all. And I believe the eighth principle makes explicit what the first seven principles say implicitly about our covenant with each other and with the world, that we are interwoven into a garment of human destiny, that what affects one directly affects all indirectly, that we cannot do this alone. We need each other. We remember that our principles and sources are not signs. They are transcendental symbols that overflow with meaning and love into this world, pointing the way to beloved community. And when the powers and principalities of the world hold up their signs saying, "Stop," we answer with a symbol of our own. Siblings in faith, may our conversations and confrontations around the eighth principle be fruitful and lead to a deepening of relationship and understanding of each other. May our symbols lead us to deeper humanity and connection to the source of life and love. And may we remember that every day is a new gift to love and to serve. May it be so. Amen. And now, we're going to sing a hymn we have sung before. Please rise as you are willing and able, don your masks, and join us in singing hymn number 113, "Where is Our Holy Church?" Siblings in faith, cherish your doubts, for doubt is the servant of truth. Question your convictions, For beliefs held too tightly strangle the mind and its natural wisdom. Suspect all certitudes, for the world whirls on, nothing abides. Yet in our inner rooms full of doubt, inquiry, and suspicion, let a corner be reserved for trust. For without trust, there is no space for communities to gather or for friendships to be forged. Indeed, this is the small corner where we connect and reconnect with each other. Go in peace, my friends, to love and serve the world.